Well, hello guys. So today is going to be the first episode of a new series that I'm going to be doing on the channel. Obviously, it's not the usual that I do on the channel. It's not actually in real life. It's going to be a video game. Now, this is a game that I've really fallen in love with in the past year. It's Planet Coaster. It's a theme park simulator. And 'tis the season at this time when the video is coming out. So we're going to be making a Winter Wonderland North Pole themed theme park. So what we're going to do, gonna start by opening a new park. And there we go. Let's get started. Alright, so the first thing that I did was I kind of skipped this out in the video, but I obviously made this massive hill, and that's just kind of because I wanted the actual North Pole to be kind of out of sight of the ground level. So I'm going to be making a ground level where the guests spawn in a little bit here, but I just made a hill in order to make it a little more interesting. Added a whole bunch of trees, and then like any park, I wanted to try and kind of map out where everything was going. I don't do this to this extent on every single park, but I did on this one just because I did want to plan it out a little bit more than usual. So I used some paint to map out where I wanted some buildings, and also used the pathing, which is always atrocious. As you can see, I'm struggling just to get over this single thing of water, but just generally, laying stuff out just so I can get a general idea of how things go. I do have a picture in my head of what I want to do, but just kind of mapping it out so I can visually see it. And then what I did was I was in the scenario editor, so I could place some path or spawn points. So I did that because I didn't want them to be in the general just hole. I wanted them to come from a building, so which I'll build in a second. Next thing that I did was on both sides. I already did the one, so I'm just gonna show you guys this one. I started making a waterfall. Now this waterfall kind of comes from the river and goes down, and if the map continued, obviously the river would go on for a lot longer, but generally I'm gonna eventually figure out how I can get a water source to be at the top, just so it kind of makes sense on why the water is up in there. I'm assuming it'll be coming from the factory, which you guys will see in a later episode. But this was quite a challenge because water isn't necessarily that friendly for waterfalls. I just had to use a whole bunch of effects, and yeah, it's not the easiest. One thing I did notice was that when you go far enough away, the water actually stops rendering, and I'm guessing that's just because of frame rate. One of the few things Planet Coaster does to optimize its system. So I guess it's a good thing, but it also does kind of suck. It goes away if you're too far away. But in general, I wouldn't recommend doing something this big with water unless you really want to do it, because it is a giant hassle. But in the end, I was pretty happy with it for both of them. I did have to do a few adjustments to the terrain along the way just to make things go a little bit quicker and make it a little bit easier for myself. But all in all, yeah, I think they turned out pretty good. Alright, so once that was done, I went back to the bottom area and started working on the buildings. Now, this first building was the hardest because I really did not know which style I wanted to do these buildings. Obviously, I wanted to do it like a holiday, so lights and just make it look festive. But all in all, I didn't really know what I wanted to make it out of. Eventually, I did choose this city brick, and I just colored it from its original to a red, which I think actually ended up looking really nice. And I use this for most of the buildings. I use them for all the buildings down here on the bottom layer. But one thing that I was still struggling with is, okay, how do I frame this? How do I make this look good? Because one of the hardest things to do in Planet Coaster is to make the buildings look detailed and not flat. Kind of like any any building sandbox game like Minecraft as well. Just you don't want to make the buildings look super flat. So I just started adding more details. Obviously I wanted to frame it out. I found these cool windows that I placed around, and then also had to decide which roof that I wanted. And the one that ended up picking, not only did I pick it because it was recolorable, and also I thought it looked good for the style, but it also had a whole bunch of different options, and then that would allow me to have multiple different styles of roofs throughout the park, so it'll be a little bit more interesting as well. Once I got the roof in, I started to do some more details, and I'm calling it snow, but technically in the game it's called icing. But just going to use that for all the buildings in the future as well to kind of frame it, give it a little bit more color, and kind of seem like snow, even though it's not. But it does definitely add some snowy, festive details, I think. So I put it around the frame of the roofs just to kind of give them an outlining as well, and then occasionally put them kind of in the middle of the roof as well, depending on what roof pieces I used. Once that was done, I started adding some more festive details, including these lights, which I really like in-game, the Planet Coaster. I went for the static ones. I didn't want too much movement. I don't know if I will use the movement ones throughout this park, just because they are kind of distracting. But I also use this garland, and throughout the series you will see that I am absolutely obsessed with this garland. I think it really adds a lot of really good details on the buildings, and just all around it looks really pretty. Also, they make a really cool sound whenever you place them. And here we go, we have some more of the ice spikes, or frosting spikes, technically going on, just giving the corners a little bit more detail. Also started using these frosting pieces, and you'll see those pop up a lot more in a little bit, but tried putting some details for the windows as well, just to make them pop a little bit more, have a little bit more depth. So I found these little shelves. And then I also used some flower pots later on a few of them to give it a little bit of variation. And you can see using more of the icing and the wreaths now as well to give some variation. But yeah, like I said, this was the hardest building. Once I finished this building, it was kind of clean sailing from there, because I could just kind of copy and paste the style of what I was doing with this one to all the other ones that I was building. So I wanted to change a little bit what I was doing with the front, just because so it wasn't the same all the way around. So I knew I wanted to find an awning. It took me a while to find the correct one, as you can kind of see, but I do end up using the straw one a lot in the future buildings, and also not this one, another one that's a little bit more, or that's the same style as the roofs themselves, so it was a little bit more coherent. Then I started working on the door frame, so I found these kind of cool pieces. I was actually Googled some holiday buildings to get some inspiration. I saw someone use these, so I thought that was pretty cool, so I put my own spin on it, framed it out. Then I was like, okay, I need a door. So I was trying to think, what door could I use, and eventually I think I stumbled upon actually a spooky door after I did some more of these details. But the spooky door, actually, the way it's framed, it just kind of looks, it doesn't look too spooky, so I was actually okay with using it. So yeah, once I put that in, I'll let you guys know. Also did some ivy around the place just to give a little bit more greenery. Okay, so I guess I'll do the door later, but now I'm starting to do the nighttime lighting because Planet Coaster does have some pretty cool lighting features that you can do. So what I did was I saw this on another YouTuber. They use the lights, which do provide light still, but not that much. So I buried some floodlights underneath the ground to actually give them a little bit more oomph, and they can light the area more up, so that way it's not totally darkness everywhere else besides right by the light. Alright, so now that is basically done, I think I make a few more tweaks here and there. I'm starting to work on the actual entrance, park entrance. This took me a while to figure out as well because it's not really a building, it's more of just kind of like a overhang with some supports. So still using the same style, I did the same colors, used the same framing, same roof, and then also the brick. The brick will be a consistent feature throughout the park. But I just kind of tried stuff out, see what I liked, and again, very happy with the way that it turned out. Just slowly adding more and more details, figuring it out the way as I go. I don't really have a plan. Buildings are one of the harder things for me to build in Planet Coaster, so I just kind of wing it and see how it goes. Sometimes I'm not so happy, but you can always kind of change it later if I'm not too happy with it. But I was very happy with the way that this one turned out. A little bit of different framing for the pillars on the side, just to kind of vary it up a little bit. But then I started adding the windows and details that I did on the other building as well on this. I did use a different awning on these parts. I think I keep it there. Added some lights as well, just because when it is nighttime, those do stand out a lot more because they don't provide like a light source around the surrounding area, but you can see them still. So putting those around looks really, really nice in my opinion. Again, putting some snowy features on the building just to give it a little bit more color variation, and also so it can have a little bit of framework going around the roofs as well. So it's kind of the same thing as the green wooden pillars, just on the roof. Then, like I said, more garland. Alright, so at this point, the basic framework of the building is pretty much complete, so now I really started focusing on the little details. So I put some presents on the roofs, and then those presents will also reappear multiple times just because I think they're really good kind of holiday decoration. I found these bows as well. I haven't really played around with the holiday features or holiday parts in Planet Coaster that much, so this is kind of my first time discovering all these pieces, and there's a whole bunch of them I really like, including these guards. So I will use those quite a few times throughout the building of this park. I then proceeded to build a cute little snowman, because why not? Need some snowmen in our life. But this was kind of the part that I enjoy the most about the buildings, is just having these little fun details. You can just build a snowman for fun and then play some around. I end up using that snowman a lot more. I put some fences to keep the guests from going the way they're not supposed to, and then also for the middle section I didn't want to make a wall, so I ended up making a cute little flower garden just used the flower pots in the game, and also just used a variety of bushes, plants, recolored a few of them. These blue ones I ended up recoloring back to the original just because I wasn't too happy. They looked too cold, and I wanted to have a little bit more warmth. So just kind of putting the flowers around, making it look like a pretty flower pot. This is also something that I love doing in Planet Coaster, just kind of making pretty garden scenes. I just think if you do it correctly, it looks so good. So now, of course, every theme park needs a sign. So this is the North Pole. That's what I'm calling the park. So a sign saying "Welcome to the North Pole," and I went through a few iterations of what the letters should be, just so that it looked correct for the right sizing. I didn't want them to be the same. Just added a few more details here and there around the entrance. Then obviously the lighting. That's kind of like every building that I do in this park will have some sort of lighting. And then towards I'm filming this ahead of the recordings, so I can tell you right now, the lighting, I'm very happy with the way that it looks at night as a whole. It just turns out like pretty cool. So I'm excited for you guys to see that. Stay tuned for that. Once I finished the entrance, I didn't want to do the normal path styles of Planet Coaster because they are very hard to deal with. And even though I do really like the way that this stone path looks that I'm using, this is a Theme Maker Toolkit item that I downloaded, and I think it looks really good as a substitute path. So what I did, I just covered the whole path, and I'll just make this as a whole plaza area, and just have the path not in every single location, just like in certain directions for the guests to actually travel on. So it might look a little bit weird having just lines of guests everywhere, but at least the plaza will look nice. The little struggle that I had here was those TMTK letters are a little bit strange. Lighting those was the last part that I needed to do for this building, so with that I will let you guys enjoy some B-roll. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed. This is going to be a 10-episode series of completing this park. The next one is going to be the train, so I hope to see you guys next week. Bye!